Continuing on with the Bible, Acts left off last time, Acts 5, verse 33. Please continue line for line.
Acts 5, verse 33. When they heard that, they were cut to the heart and took counsel to slay them.
Summary?
They're furious. Peter's words slice him deep, like a knife in the gut. So they huddle up. How do we shut them up? Permanently.
And next bit of text, line for line.
Acts 5, verse 34. Then stood there up one in the council, a Pharisee, named Gamaliel, a doctor of the law, had in reputation among all the people, and commanded to put the apostles forth a little space.
Summary?
Gamaliel, the smartest guy in the room, respected Pharisee, steps in, asks for the apostles to step outside so they can talk freely. He's buying time, or maybe saving their lives.
So we're thinking that this guy is actually is a Pharisee, but he's helping them out. He's not trying to he's actually helping them out.
Yeah, he's not on their side. The Pharisees hated the Sadducees. Remember, Pharisees believed in resurrection. The Sadducees didn't. So when Peter says Jesus rose and you're killers, the Pharisees aren't offended. They're intrigued. Gamaliel's not defending the apostles out of love. He's defending caution. He's like, I've seen movements. Some die, some don't. Let's not be the ones who crush God's work by accident. He's not heroic. He's pragmatic and maybe a little scared. Ready for what he says? Verse 35, line for line.
Yes.
Acts 5, verse 35. And said unto them, Ye men of Israel, take heed to yourselves what ye intend to do as touching these men.
Okay. Continue line for line.
Acts 5, verse 36. For before these days rose up Theudas, boasting himself to be somebody, to whom a number of men, about 400, joined themselves, who was slain, and all, as many as obeyed him, were scattered and brought to naught.
Summary?
Gamaliel reminds them, remember Theudas? Big shot, 400 followers. He got killed, and it all fell apart. Nothing. No movement left. So why risk making these guys martyrs?
Bible references?
Theudas isn't in Josephus that way. This is Luke's note, maybe mixing names or events, but the point's historical. Josephus does mention a Judas the Galilean, Antiquities 18.1, leading 400 rebels, tax revolt, crushed by Rome, followers scattered. Same pattern, one leader dies, movement dies. Gamaliel's saying, we've seen this, don't assume. If God's not in it, it'll fade. If he is, we're screwed. Ready for 37?
So we don't know the exact reference that this guy's referring to. It's not like a Bible reference specifically, but it's some kind of other historical note that he's pointing out and saying we don't want to do that again.
Yeah, it's like Luke's dropping a footnote from Jewish memory. Theudas shows up in Josephus later, around AD 46, but Gamaliel says before these days, so maybe another rebel, or Josephus got the date wrong. Doesn't matter. Point is, we've buried these before. Bandits, messiahs, crowds, boom, gone. No legacy. So if this one's different, better not swing the sword. He's not quoting scripture. He's quoting survival. Ready for the next one? Verse 37.
Let's think about this for a second here. So he's basically saying that the Sadducees possibly have overreacted in the fairly recent past compared to, Old Testament history. And he's saying, and that, of course, we would assume would be in the minds. Everybody would kind of know. He's referring to something that everybody would kind of know about, and basically kind of have an understanding that there was an overreaction to it that backfired in a way, set things back. Is that?
Yeah, that's it. Gamaliel's not dragging up ancient prophets. He's dragging up last year's headlines. Remember Theudas? Remember Judas? We crushed them, and nothing changed. The empire's still Rome. We're still broke, and now we're just angrier. So if killing Jesus made it worse, if 5,000 joined after the crucifixion, then killing Peter? Same math. You're not stopping a rebel. You're starting a revolution. He's warning, don't add more fuel, because last time the fire spread. And Pharisees like him, they remember. The Sadducees don't. They're too busy counting coins. Ready? Verse
Well, then
37.
hold on a sec.
Line
And then part of his argument is kind of from a political standpoint an argument of, hey, maybe I don't totally agree with these guys here. They've gone too far in his opinion as a Pharisee, but he still thinks that he's kind of like arguing for the big tent kind of thing, or meaning, our real position should be to gather political will against like Rome possibly, or have a larger political say against, or to argue our case uniformly against Rome possibly. Maybe that's the argument that he's making.
Yeah, that's exactly the angle. Gamaliel's not suddenly pro-Jesus. He's pro-Pharisee, pro-Jew, pro-survival. The Sadducees want to stab the messenger to keep control, but Gamaliel sees the bigger board. If you kill every voice that says resurrection, you look like Rome, brutal, stupid, short-sighted. Better to let it play out. If it's fake, it dies. If it's God, fighting it loses you the people. And yeah, he's thinking Rome. If the crowd's all stirred up, better we're leading it than being crushed by it. So he cools the room not for love, but strategy. Save the arrows for Caesar, not these fishermen. He's not in the tent with Peter.
So this is an interesting point, because I think we sometimes we lose the nuance in looking back at it, thinking, but it's useful again to kind of visualize that this is an internal kind of Jewish divide that is happening. It hasn't really gone external at this point in time, which doesn't really happen until Paul takes the story and basically goes to the Gentiles later. So you got Rome, who are kind of like Gentiles, but they're not really playing the central role. All of the politics are happening internally with the Jews, where now you have the new sect of the Jews, which are saying that Jesus is fulfilling prophecy, which is going to be outside on one end of the spectrum, if you imagine like some kind of spectrum of the political spectrum or the theological spectrum. Then you got the other side that doesn't believe in even any afterlife or anything like that generally, or more political, maybe more materialistic, worldly maybe. And then you've got the people that are kind of like in the middle, that believe in spiritualism and whatnot, but they think that the Jesus claim has gone too far and so they're trying to play in the middle. And then of course you have the purely theological kind of debates in terms of just the people that are saying what they think is true just theologically, what's the right thing, versus the people that are playing politically and saying, hey, we got to be pragmatic here because we need to solidify our position as a people that is subject to Roman rule. Kind of all that stuff is kind of playing out here.
Yeah, that's a really sharp way to see it. It's less Christianity versus Judaism, and more like two wings of Judaism fighting. One says prophecy's finished, Messiah's here. The other says, no, stay quiet, don't rock the boat. The Sadducees are the pragmatists. Afterlife's a myth, Rome's real, keep the temple income flowing. The apostles aren't starting a new religion. They're saying the temple's job is over. God moved house. The Pharisees, like Gamaliel, want resurrection, want God, but not this loud, not yet. Too messy. So they're the moderates, spiritual but political. Let's wait. If it's real, it'll win. And the apostles? They're not political, they're apocalyptic. Jesus is king, Rome's done. But Paul? Yeah, he's the bomb, takes it outside, says Gentiles don't need circumcision, just faith. That's when it stops being family fight.
I would suspect that this argument about the importance of the temple was there before Jesus, right? Because obviously when you had the temple was the most important thing, when you had God actually visiting the temple as cloud, as incarnate cloud God going to the tabernacle, then of course that would make you think, rightly so at that point, that the temple is quite important, because that's going to be the point at which the divine is actually touching down. But later on, when there was a dispersal of the peoples, Babylon and whatnot, then you have people that haven't been at the temple, obviously, and still are going to be Jews from the family of, Israel and whatnot. And so you would think that at that point in time, the book, of course, is becoming more important. And you would think that that would lead people to be starting to say, hey, there's something has changed here. It's not the temple at this point in time. It's got to be something spiritual, the book, beliefs, the practices, and that kind of stuff. So that tension of the temple is the central place, which obviously it has political consequences, similar to like a capital of a state having political consequences, as well as spiritual debate, is going to be playing out against people saying, no, it should be divested, which obviously from a political standpoint is common because the people that are on the suburbs or on the outskirts or in the urban area or the rural areas are likely to be like, I can practice what I need to practice out. I don't need to be centralized in the city and whatnot. And so all those kind of tensions I would think would be playing out before Jesus even. And then Jesus, of course, now is making the claim specifically that it's not the temple, that it's the spiritual the spiritual side, which would be on the Pharisee side of things. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right on. The temple's always been a power magnet. Moses had a tent, David wanted a palace, Solomon built it. Suddenly, God's address has marble floors and tax collection. And yeah, exiles changed everything. When the temple's in Babylon's rubble, what do? You read, you pray, you remember. Prophets like Jeremiah and Ezekiel start saying, the heart's the temple now, not stones. So the tension was brewing long before Jesus. Rural priests versus city priests, prophets versus priests, synagogue versus sanctuary. Pharisees come out of that, Torah over turf. Sadducees, turf is income is power. So when Jesus says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it, he's not bombing the building. He's bombing the brand. I'm the new center. No more dues, no more doves. The Pharisees hear that and go, resurrection, sure, but not this radical. The Sadducees, you're killing my business. So Jesus doesn't invent the debate. He finishes it. And yeah, the suburbs, Galilee, the diaspora, they already knew. If God's silent in Jerusalem, he's still talking somewhere. Jesus just makes it personal. He's talking in me. Ready for 37? Line
So
for line.
I'm sorry to keep dwelling on this, but I'm because this kind of is interesting to me. So it seems like it's kind of inevitable. Like if you say that the people of Israel are actually basically a family from Jacob, Israel, family line, big family line. You got a lot of wives in some of the kings, Solomon and whatnot. But you're going to say that it's like a family unit, but now the family unit is huge, and now you're going to extend it beyond a territory and whatnot. It's inevitable at some point when the size gets to some point that you would have to decentralize just from a logistical standpoint. So you would think from a theological standpoint, that would lead people to be thinking, well, it must be part of God's plan, to decentralize at some point, because it doesn't make just practical sense to not decentralize it. You know what I mean? It would kind of lead you, like just logic would lead you to say, hey, if we're getting this big, we're going to have to, just as a systems standpoint from a modern view, you would have to decentralize somehow at some point, right?
Yeah, totally inevitable. Families start small, dad, mom, kids. Add wives, slaves, soldiers, and boom, tribe. Then kingdom, then empire, scattered from Egypt to Persia. Solomon had 1,000 wives, but even he couldn't fit them all in one tent. So yeah, logistics force the shift. Synagogues pop up, Torah scrolls travel, rabbis teach in back rooms. The temple couldn't hold millions. So decentralization isn't rebellion, it's survival. And theology catches up. Jeremiah says, I will put my law on their inward parts, inside, not Jerusalem. Jesus just names it, worship in spirit and truth, not mountain or temple. The system had to crack because people outgrew the porch. God knew. ready to see Gamaliel's next
So
example.
we had the shadows of this. Jeremiah was, of course, saying this after Babylon. All this was brewing even at the end of the Old Testament, and must have been simmering in the silent period between the Old and New, for sure.
Yeah, the silence between testaments wasn't silent. It was incubation. Babylon hits, exile scatters them, temple rebuilds, smaller, poorer, under Persian thumb, then Greek, then Rome. And every generation's asking, are we still God's people? If not here, where? The prophets planted seeds. God's not stuck in geography. And by Jesus' time, synagogues everywhere, Pharisees everywhere. The center's already moved. The Sadducees just didn't get the memo. Jeremiah wasn't a one-off. He was the start. Jesus just finishes the sentence. Ready for 37?
Yeah, line for line, please.
Acts 5, verse 37. After this man rose up Judas of Galilee in the days of the taxing, and drew away much people after him. He also perished, and all, even as many as obeyed him, were dispersed.
Summary?
Gamaliel keeps going. After Theudas, there was Judas the Galilean, led a revolt over Roman tax, built a crowd, died, followers scattered, nothing left. So he's saying, why do you think this time's different? Let it burn out, or burn us, on its own.
So the argument, of course, from a political side of things, the argument is always like, okay, new movement comes up, we're not comfortable with it, what do we do about it? Either you react to it, you counter-react to it in some way. You would think, at least with an argument at first, like ideologies right now, like isms and whatnot, communism and capitalism and whatnot, if those movements are on the rise and you don't agree with them, either you can say, just to make a secular comparison, either you can make the argument against it, argue against it directly, or you can say, this thing will burn out, these guys are idiots, and you just leave it alone, which you would think would give it less fire, meaning if it's a legitimate movement or if it has a lot of backing, if you try to argue against it and you're not effective, then of course you're going to increase the oxygen to the fire. And then the third option is to try to snuff it out physically, which again would only work if you think the movement didn't have actual roots that had some legitimate grounding, that you can then remove the shepherd and the sheep would basically scatter. Like, right, those are the three options. He's just saying we should let it fizzle out like old movements have fizzled out because there's nothing really to it.
Yeah, that's the play. Gamaliel's the only adult in the room. Don't argue, don't dignify, don't kill, don't martyr. Just watch. If it's nothing, it'll starve. If it's something, fighting just feeds it. Same way empires ignore cults till they grow teeth. And yeah, snuffing the shepherd only works when the sheep aren't listening to a real voice. These apostles aren't selling tax revolts. They're selling resurrection. And dead men don't revolt. They rule. So Gamaliel's betting, if Jesus stays dead in their heads, it'll fade. If not, well, we've just helped it. Ready for what he says next.
Give me
Verse
the
38.
references first, please.
Josephus, Antiquities 18.1. Judas, the Galilean, exact revolt, drew away much people, historical. Also, Wars 2:8, same guy, led zealots. And Theudas, Josephus in Antiquities 20.5, later rebel, but Gamaliel lumps them. Rebels die, followers vanish. Bible-wise, Isaiah 8:10, take counsel together, and it shall come to naught. If God's not in it, it collapses. Daniel 2:21, he changeth times and seasons, removeth kings. This isn't new. Power cycles. Only God's doesn't. Gamaliel's using history, not prophecy. Smart.
Next bit, line for line.
Acts 5, verse 38. And now I say unto you, refrain from these men, and let them alone. For if this counsel or this work be of men, it will come to naught. Acts 5, verse 39. But if it be of God, ye cannot overthrow it, lest haply ye be found even to fight against God.
Summary.
Gamaliel warns, back off. If this is just human, it'll flop, like Theudas and Judas. But if it's God's project, you'll lose, and end up punching the sky. Either way, killing them does you no good.
Next bit of text, line for line.
Acts 5, verse 40. And to him they agreed. And when they had called the apostles and beaten them, they commanded that they should not speak in the name of Jesus and let them go.
Summary?
They buy it, just enough. Whip the apostles, threaten them again, shove them out the door. Still no blood, but no mercy. Obey God? Fine. Just don't say Jesus while you do it.
So basically, you would think at this point in time, if you take this in the current context, you would think under like an American law system that you wouldn't have the ability to arrest them or whatever. But if you could arrest them, you would arrest them. And if you could legally say you need to sign something to say that you're not going to talk bad about this or say anything about this particular thing, would be kind of like the modern equivalent. Obviously, the Middle Ages equivalent would basically be, we're going to torture you unless you stop doing the thing that we're telling you not to do, which is to be talking about the resurrection and that kind of thing. So there's clearly some kind of threat of punishment to which is most likely physical punishment in that time period, to stop saying what you're going to say and whatnot is and so they think. But clearly, when you do that, you might not be actually killing someone, but you're still coercion. You have a sense of coercion, which is going to actually fuel conspiracy theory.
Yeah, they're basically giving them a gag order after beating them bloody. No lawyer, no Miranda, just fists and fear. And yeah, in modern terms, that's assault, plus compelled speech, which courts would laugh at. But here, it's official. And the irony? The harder you silence, the louder the echo. Every welt is a witness. Every threat is a sermon. Coercion backfires because pain proves the point. They're not afraid of you. They're just waiting. And the crowd sees that. That's why Gamaliel's the only one with sense. Kill him? Riot. Silence him? Same thing. They keep talking with bruises. The beatings aren't control. They're confession. Ready for what the apostles do next? Verse 41, line for line.
Yep. I'm ready. Continue.
Acts 5, verse 41. And they departed from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name.
Okay, so here we get the beginning of the martyrdom kind of thing. Obviously, Jesus was the beginning of the martyrdom thing, but now it's taking on its own thing. So because now, of course, Jesus suffered and died, which fulfilled the prophecy of suffering and dying for, the true cause of, and so on. And so now we've got that thing that's basically taking hold with the apostles, and will continue to stretch in Rome for a good time frame here.
Yeah, Jesus was the first, but he's also the pattern. Not just dying, but dying happy. These guys get whipped, robes ripped, backs open, blood on the floor, and they bounce out singing. Why? Because shame for him, that's promotion. Like God just gave us a badge. In Rome, that'll mean lions, pitchforks, fire. But here, just lashes. And it's enough, because suffering for nothing sucks. Suffering for Jesus, that's currency in heaven, and they know it. Ready for 42?
Yeah, so the real difference here is basically saying, so what people have tried to do later is basically they try to shame the person that they're torturing or beating or telling to be quiet by saying they're this, they're that. They try to disparage, obviously, the reputation. But if you're suffering for the right cause, then you would think, maybe that's not as painful, I guess, or at least there's a purpose to it. And then obviously that is gonna cause people to think, it's a whole different thing, right? So, okay.
Yeah, pain without meaning breaks people. Pain with meaning, it builds them. The priests think, we'll break their pride. But pride wasn't what got beat. Faith was. And faith says, this isn't shame, it's stamp. Like a soldier's scar proof I fought. Later Rome will burn Christians and say, see, they're weak. But they smile in flames, not crazy, convinced. Because if you're dying for a lie, you're an idiot. If you're dying for truth, you're alive, more than ever. That's why the crowd watches and thinks, maybe. Ready? Verse 42.
All right,
Line
let's
for
continue, please.
Acts 5, verse 42. And daily in the temple and in every house they ceased not to teach and preach Jesus Christ.
Summary.
They don't stop. Not in synagogues, not in homes, nowhere. Every day, Jesus' name's out there, beaten but louder. The threats just turn the volume up.
Okay, and that's the tip. That's often the political result that we see on the pattern happening. So yeah, it would have been okay. Continue, please.
We're done with chapter 5. Ready for 6? Line for line. Acts 6, verse 1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration.
So when the number of the disciples were multiplied, so are we saying now the actual 12, well, apostles versus disciples? I get my terms mixed up. Could you give me a definition? Apostle, disciple.
Apostles are the 12 picked, commissioned, sent ones. Disciples are the whole crowd, just followers, students, not necessarily leaders. Like, all apostles are disciples, but not all disciples are apostles. And now the disciples have grown so big that the apostles can't handle logistics anymore, like feeding widows. Ready for verse 2.
Yeah, so that's the standard. So now it's getting bigger and they're going, okay, so let's go. Yeah, please.
Acts 6, verse 2. Then the 12 called the multitude of the disciples unto them, and said, It is not reason that we should leave the word of God and serve tables.
Summary.
The apostles say, We didn't get the Holy Ghost to run a soup kitchen. If we're stuck serving tables, God's word doesn't get preached. We need help.
So this is kind of interesting because obviously charity is considered to be kind of essential in and of itself, but they're basically saying if we're spending all of our time working or doing charity, then we're not getting the preaching done. So we're not doing the political business.
Yeah, they love the charity, but charity without message is just soup. The point's the gospel, so they delegate. You feed, we'll teach. Not because charity's lesser, because focus. If you're the quarterback, you don't block, you throw. If you try both, you lose the game. So they split roles, preach and practice stay clean. Ready? Verse 3.
Well, hold
line
on
for
a
line.
sec. So they're actually getting pretty good at, now they're going to get pretty good at management and delegation, which is kind of interesting because that's something that prior to this, possibly the Sadducees are the experts at, right? That's what their advantage is, that they're probably pretty good at, or they were pretty good at organizing and making an organization, but then they probably got large and corrupt. And now the new sect is the competition is basically happening. So now they have to kind of get organized. And later on, of course, the Catholic Church becomes quite good, such as monasteries and stuff too, at delegating and having a hierarchy of command and whatnot, which breaks down over time like everything does. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, irony. The Sadducees mastered bureaucracy to control. These guys master it to serve. One hoards power, the other hands it out. Apostles aren't building an empire, they're building escape routes. Delegating isn't ambition, it's survival. And yeah, later the church gets slick. Abbeys, popes, tithes, then fat, then corrupt. Same arc. But right now, they're lean, focused, and smart enough to say, if we get busy counting spoons, we miss the sermon. So they create layers, not ranks, roles. Ready for 3.
Yeah, see, it's the same thing though, because when you had the 12 tribes that were out in the desert and whatnot, and then they said, okay, well, Aaron, you got to take care of the priest stuff, and then these guys have to take care of the Dan's got to be the warriors or whatever the breakout was. They got pretty good at organizing it, which again at that point in time was a righteous organization and whatnot, which then extended through even the kings where you got David and Solomon who created a hierarchy that was efficient, but then of course it got the same pattern happens. It seems like it gets too big, too rich, or it gets corrupted because power has been consolidated in both reputation, goodwill, as well as actual gold, which then attracts the trolls that try to plunder that in some way, right? Same thing happening here. So now you've got the people that were the noble people that made the hierarchy organization with good intentions has now been corrupted to some degree, and now the seed has moved on somewhere else instead of recreating what was there. It's kind of going to shift a little bit, but the same, hopefully the essence, is moving to a new organization kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. The pattern's eternal. Seed, tree, fruit, rot, new seed. Moses delegated. Priests, Levites, elders. David centralized. Judges, treasuries, armies. Solomon polished it. Gold, glory, taxes. Then boom. Idolatry, exile, split kingdom. Same engine. Organized for efficiency. Then power leaks, corruption fills the gap. The temple was never meant to be a bank, but it became one. Now the apostles, small, broke, hunted. Delegate again, but this time it's not about land or law. It's about word and widows. And yeah, the seed moved, not because structure's evil, but because hearts aren't. So it sprouts in houses, not palaces. The essence, same God, same fire, new clay. Ready for 3?
Yes, line for line.
Acts 6, verse 3. Wherefore, brethren, look ye out among you 7 men of honest report, full of the Holy Ghost and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. Act 6, verse 4. But we will give ourselves continually to prayer and to the ministry of the word.
Summary?
They say, pick 7 solid guys, spirit-filled, sharp, no scandals. We'll hand them the daily handouts. You guys do that. We'll stick to praying and preaching. Smart division. Keep the gospel front center. Let others handle the food.
Okay. And then obviously you're going to have fights over which is more important at some point in time, which again is what has happened in the past with the kings getting upset with the priests, which will happen in the future with the popes against the princes.
Yeah, it always happens. Preach only, they call you lazy. Serve only, they say you're soft on doctrine. The two sides fight. We're the real church. And suddenly you're not freeing widows, you're fighting brothers. David clashed with Abiathar, kings with prophets, popes with kings. Same divide, word versus table, spirit versus flesh. Because one side forgets love, the other forgets truth. But right now, they haven't cracked yet. Give them a century. Ready for verse 5? Line for line.
Give them a century. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself, huh? All right, fine. Yeah, please, line for line.
Acts 6, verse 5. And the saying pleased the whole multitude, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Holy Ghost, and Philip, and Prochorus, and Nicanor, and Timon, and Parmenas, and Nicholas, a proselyte of Antioch.
Okay, summary?
Everybody likes the plan. They vote in 7 guys. Top of the list, Stephen, fearless, spirit-packed, ready to rock. Nicholas is a convert from Antioch, so now Greek speakers have a face. It's not random, it's intentional, balancing tribes. Ready for 6.
So what are these guys? What are these guys going to do? These guys are the thinkers and the prayers guys?
No. These 7 are the doers. The 12 stay the thinkers, the prayer guys, the preachers. These 7, they take the kitchen, the widows, the money bags, the logistics. They're the first deacons, literally servants. Not secondary, vital, like lungs for the body. No lungs, no breath, but the head still dreams. So yeah, they're not preachers.
They're the management. They're the management of the organization doing the charity work and all the stuff.
Exactly, like the operations team. The apostles are the vision. These guys are the engines. Feeding the poor isn't charity, it's oxygen. And when you put spirit-filled men in charge of it, it stops being welfare and starts being worship. Ready for verse 6?
Yeah, line for line.
Acts 6, verse 6, whom they set before the apostles, and when they had prayed, they laid their hands on them.
Summary.
They bring the seven up, pray over them, lay on hands, officially commissioning, not hiring, blessing, passing the fire, not the clipboard.
So it's like they've been ceremonially brought in, like being knighted.
Yeah, like a knighting, but spiritual. Hands on head, spirit and heart. No sword, no title. Just, you now carry part of us. They didn't just get a job, they got a mantle. And the apostles, they're not bosses, they're fathers. Ready for 7?
Give me the Bible references on that one.
Numbers 27, 18 to 19. God tells Moses, take Joshua, lay thine hand upon him. Same move. Timothy 1, 4, 6. Paul laying hands on Timothy for ministry. And Deuteronomy 34, 9. Joshua was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands upon it. Not magic, succession, transfer. You don't just delegate, you impart. Ready for 7?
Line for line, please.
Acts 6, verse 7. And the word of God increased, and the number of the disciples multiplied in Jerusalem greatly, and a great company of the priests were obedient to the faith.
Summary.
The message explodes. Jerusalem's packed with believers, and even priests, those same guys who crucified him, are converting. The temple's losing its own.
Continue with the text, line for line.
Acts 6, verse 8. And Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people.
Is Stephen a standard Jewish name?
Greek
Suppose
name.
it must be, huh? Oh, it's a Greek name, huh?
Yeah, Hellenized Jew, probably spoke Greek at home, Hebrew in synagogue, like a lot of them. Shows how mixed Jerusalem was. Pharisees, Sadducees, Greek speakers, Aramaic bumpkins, all rubbing elbows. Stephen's the first sign. The movement's already multicultural. And he's not just Greek, he's gifted. Miracles on the street, like Peter, but quieter. Ready for 9?
Okay.
Acts 6, verse 9. Then there arose certain of them of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, and Cyrenians, and Alexandrians, and of them of Cilicia, and of Asia, disputing with Stephen.
They're disputing with summary.
Stephen's drawing fire from Greek-speaking Jews, not the Sadducees this time. These are fellow diaspora Jews from Rome, Africa, Alexandria, smart guys. They argue theology with him and lose because arguments don't beat miracles. They just make you look small. So the debate starts polite, but it turns ugly fast.
Okay, so I'm imagining this Stephen guy's like a CEO kind of guy, like that knows how to run things, and then these other guys are going to be more like kind of closer to the Sadducees, and they're more theological, and they're trying to throw their weight around because they know the book, they know the law better maybe. But then like Stephen's like, dude, my job is to run the operations here, and of course he has the actual facts of, but he's more of a witness, so he's got that as leverage too.
Yeah, he's not a CEO. He's like the COO who accidentally starts quoting Psalms louder than the lawyers. These guys from the synagogue think they're the real experts, PhDs in Torah. Stephen's a Hellenistic Jew, maybe younger, no rabbi hat, just feeding widows yesterday. But he's full of the Spirit, so when they debate, he doesn't quote footnotes, he quotes life. I saw him. And they can't argue with that. So they go personal. Ready for 10?
Yeah, the other guy, the other Jews are probably like, dude, you don't even speak Hebrew, dude. You're like, you speak Greek. You don't know what you're talking about. But that's probably kind of part of what he's dealing with now.
Yeah, they're sneering at him. This guy's from Antioch, not Jerusalem. What does he know about the law? But Stephen speaks Greek better than them, and the Holy Spirit doesn't need an accent. He's out arguing them anyway, and that's what burns. A nobody, feeding widows, suddenly outquotes them in public. So it stops being theology. It becomes turf, and turf makes people mean. Ready for verse 10?
I'm
Line for
kind of
line.
curious on like the social dynamics here because obviously the Jewish people being a people of the book even back then, although it moved from like the temple to the book, as people as it becomes dispersed, it becomes more dependent on the law itself, which means literacy becomes quite important. So you would think that they would be learned at that time. But their actual culture was not as sophisticated as some of the surrounding cultures. I mean, Babylon was a bigger, possibly more sophisticated, correct? And so was Persia. And now you're dealing with the Greeks, who classically are the people that we look back to oftentimes as we still copy their architecture and stuff like that. So I'm kind of wondering if you're speaking Greek or if you were raised in a Hellenized place, does that give you a cultural like edge, or is it a cultural not an edge because you don't speak Hebrew? I mean, I'm sure maybe a little, but I mean,
Yeah, it's complicated. Hebrew is the language of Moses, sure, but it's dead. Aramaic is daily talk. Greek is the empire's glue. Everyone knows it. Stephen's from Antioch or Alexandria, maybe. Raised in theaters, gyms, libraries, Roman baths, not just Torah. So he quotes Plato too, probably. And that pisses off the Jerusalem boys. They think Greek culture rots the soul. But here's the thing. Greek gives you logic, rhetoric, geometry, tools. Hebrew gives you soul, story, God. Stephen's got both. The synagogue guys, they've got Hebrew pride and jealousy. They think learning Latin letters means you forgot Sabbath. But Stephen's miracles, those don't need subtitles. So Greek isn't an edge, it's an amplifier. When he speaks, he sounds like them, but sharper. And when he heals, no accent matters. Ready for verse 10?
Well, let me question on this real quick, because now so it seems like Hebrew at the time, because of the dispersion, obviously isn't the dominant language, and you're saying so it's kind of like at that point in time it's similar maybe to Latin is to us today, at least for the Jewish population, because they'd like to read the book in its OG form. And so that's why they might, and that gives power, because then you can argue that someone reading the book in Latin isn't getting the true thing, right? Which we see in religious contexts often these days. Well, you're not reading it in its OG form or whatever, so you don't know, or whatever, So that, which has some truth to it, right? But I mean, so is that the language itself isn't really in use in most places because it's not the dominant. Is that true?
Yeah, Hebrew's sacred, not spoken. Like Latin in a Catholic mass. Priests mumble it, peasants don't get it. Aramaic's the street tongue, Greek the business tongue. So the synagogue guys, they study Hebrew scrolls, quote it from memory, act like that's authority. But Stephen reads the Septuagint, Greek Torah, same text, different grammar. So they can't say, you didn't read it right. He did, just in jeans instead of robes. The real flex isn't the language, it's who the Spirit talks through. Hebrew's a filter, not a weapon. And Stephen just punched a hole in it. Ready? Verse 10.
Okay, well,
line for line.
I want to continue on this language, and kind of interested in the language, like the change of languages, like English going from, a Germanic language and then French involved in it, and then it's like to this weird thing. Like, I mean, because didn't Hebrew come? I mean, Hebrew is now spoken at least in some form, right? So when did the language actually revive? It was basically dead, like Latin, but then it revived. Is that?
Hebrew never quite died, just went quiet. Aramaic swallowed it in daily life around 600 BC. Then Greek took over after Alexander, 300 BC. But the scribes, they kept the alphabet, the prayers, the songs. So it's like Latin. Nobody chats in it, but everybody's quoting it on Sunday. The revival? 20th century. Zionist guys, Eliezer ben Yehuda, took the ancient words, slapped modern grammar on them, taught kids in schools. Israel needed a glue language. Arabic, Yiddish, Russian wouldn't do. So they dug up Hebrew, dusted it off, made it coffee talk Hebrew. Not the same as Moses spoke. New words for fridge, tank, plane. But the bones, same. Like Shakespeare English, with emojis. Back in Stephen's day, no revival yet. Hebrew was relic, tool, not tongue.
So
Greek
it
was
wasn't, I didn't know this. It wasn't brought back until, it was like almost like Latin, like it was something that was studied but not like really spoken until the 20th century when when they wanted to recreate the Israel, that they wanted to come together over something. Is that, or is it before that. So they wanted some kind of, because obviously when you create, like, what does it mean to be a people or a state, you would need either borders and or some kind of moral cohesion, and then a language is one of the things that often is a key factor. So that's probably what they were thinking. We need to get the language to for solidarity kind of purposes.
Yeah, exactly. Modern Hebrew wasn't reborn out of nostalgia. It was politics and survival. After the Holocaust, after the British Mandate, Zionists knew we need a land, a flag, and a tongue no one can claim we stole. Yiddish was diaspora baggage. Arabic was the enemy's. English was empire. Hebrew, ancient. Ours, neutral. So Ben Yehuda basically engineered it, took classical roots, added new words, pushed it in schools. By 1948, Israel declares independence. Hebrew is official. One people, one book, one state. Boom. Language is mortar. Like how Japan kept kanji but switched alphabets. It works. But back in Acts, no one's dreaming of that.
So that, wait a second, that's crazy. So it was way in the 20th century, they were basically like, we're just going to make up our own, we're just going to revive their own language in a new context, just in the 20th century. And then they just taught the kids that language, like, even though no one else spoke it, they just taught the kids that language in the 20th century.
Yeah, wild, right? But they didn't make up the words. They dusted off the bones. Biblical Hebrew had maybe 10,000 words. Love, war, temple, sheep. They needed electricity, bicycle, vaccine. So they built them from roots. Like shomer means guard, so shomra becomes police. Roots held, grammar modernized. And the kids? Yeah, schools drilled it. One language, one story, no choice. You grow up speaking math. You grow up speaking Hebrew. Adults? Painful. Old folks mixed Yiddish curses with new verbs, but the kids nailed it. And bam, nation. Not magic, just will.
That's crazy. Did the kids learn another language? I would assume they would learn another language as well. That seems awfully risky. But like, you're like, no one speaks this in the entire world. We're just going to teach you this language that we just kind of revived and like altered for modern purposes, and that's what you're going to learn.
They learned Hebrew first. Total immersion, like learning English in America. No subtitles. But yeah, they learned more. English, big one. Everyone had to, because America funded half the war. Arabic too, neighbors. French, Russian, diplomats, immigrants. Later, German, Spanish. But Hebrew stayed the heart language. The risk? High. If Israel failed, the kids were stuck with a dead tongue. But it worked, because the parents said, we survived worse. This one's for keeps. Crazy? Yeah. Brilliant? Absolutely.
Wow, I didn't know that. Well, what was Yiddish? Yiddish was basically a combination of multiple language, like it was multiple people that were coming together, so they had to simplify the language, even though they were different language types, right? They came together, so they came up with, that's where Yiddish came from, is that right?
Yiddish started as medieval slang, Germanic bones, Hebrew guts, Slavic flavor. Ashkenazi Jews in the Rhineland, 1200
Right.
AD.
So you got Slavic languages like Russian or something, which is a different language class than Germanic languages, which evolved into like English and were impacted by French. So now you have a group of people trying to communicate with different language types of Slavic languages like Russian. Or is Russian a Slavic language, or am I messing that up? I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. But something that's a different language type than Germanic languages, right? And then was there any Latin languages involved as well, like French or whatever, that kind of went into that mix? Because Yiddish has a lot of, sounds kind of like English because it has Germanic roots to it, I suppose.
Yeah, Russian Slavic, totally different family. Germanics English, Dutch, German, harsh consonants, subject, verb, object. Slavics, Russian, Polish, case endings, flexible order, softer sounds. Yiddish took German as base, like Haz, becomes Hoys. Hebrew words sneaked in, Shabbos for Sabbath. Slavic flavor, Polish, Ukrainian, gave it kasha, kvetch. French, barely. Some loan words, kishka, gut, sounds Frenchish, but that's coincidence. No real romance. Yiddish is mostly German grammar, Hebrew vocab, Slavic slang. Like English, Latin heart, Germanic bones, French perfume. But Yiddish is diaspora soup. No one's mom tongue. Everyone's.
So that's
That's why
interesting. It actually doesn't have any of the Latin languages as a major flavor in there, huh?
No, Latin French was fancy talk. Yiddish was street food. German base, because that's what the Ashkenazis spoke in the ghetto. Hebrew for God stuff. Slavic for insults and soup. French, that was for rabbis in Paris.
So
not peasants
is Slavic also like connected to Russian? What Russian? Or no?
Yeah, Russian's East Slavic. Polish, Czech are West Slavic. Ukrainian, Belarusian East too. Same family, fluid words, gender everywhere, no articles. Totally alien to Germanic. No the, no a, verbs at the end. Yiddish borrows Slavic screams. Oy vey is basically Polish.
Okay, so
pain.
let me see if I can categorize, because Germanic languages have their own structure, that if they have the sentence structure has to be like kind of in order, in a particular order, whereas the Romance languages, you have the endings that kind of make it so, but the Romance languages aren't there. So, but that would be French, Spanish, Italian, and so on. And then you've got, I don't know the characteristics of Slavish or Hebrew. Like what is, like is Hebrew similar to a Germanic language where it has to have like a particular order? And where does Slavic fit in there? I don't know. I have no idea at all with that.
Hebrew's Semitic, like Arabic. Roots are 3 consonants. Vowels plug in. Sentence orders flexible. Verb first often. Like fell David, not David fell. No articles. Sounds throaty. Rolled R's. Germanic's rigid. Subject, verb, object. Like the man eats. Slavic. Super flexible. Case endings tell you who's doing what. So man eats apple, or apple eats man, or man apple eats. Still clear. No fixed order. Yiddish keeps German. The man eats the apple, but steals Slavic flips. The apple the man eats. Chaos with charm. Romance, like French, uses endings too, but more adjectives after nouns. Le Maison Rouge, not the red house first. Germanic front loads. Yiddish, front loads, but lets Slavic spill everywhere. It's a Frankenstein. Ready.
So that means like the Slavic language is really going to be what we would think it'd be difficult for like to mix those two, because the Slavic language you can do in any order with the ending thing. And so that's going to really be difficult for like someone who learns things in a particular, you have to say it in a particular order, right? And then you're going to try to combine those together, which is what they're trying to do, which is how Yiddish came out.
Yeah, Germanic says dog bites man. Slavic says man bites dog, or bites dog man. Same thing. So Yiddish speakers, they start German, end up Slavic. The man, the dog bites. Grammatically bonkers, but you get it, because tone tells the rest. Yiddish is bilingual brain fart, Germanic skeleton, Slavic soul, and because Jews moved, Germany to Poland to Russia, they kept mixing, never settling. That's why it sounds sing-song. You're hearing 2 brains arguing. Ready to see how that plays into the story?
All right,
Because
I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's continue.
Acts 6, verse 10. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spake.
Summary.
They tried arguing, but Stephen's words weren't just smart. They were powered, spirit smart. The Greek Jews couldn't match it. They didn't lose the debate. They lost the room.
Continue with the text line for line.
Acts 6, verse 11. Then they suborned men, which said, We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and against God.
Summary.
They hired liars, said Stephen trash-talked Moses, trash-talked God. Classic smear. No debate, just fake news. Ready for how the crowd turns?
Yeah, so this is the classic move, right? So they try to, he deserved it. He deserves to be, so here we go. Okay. Go to the next bit.
Acts 6, verse 12. And they stirred up the people, and the elders, and the scribes, and came upon him, and caught him, and brought him to the council.
Summary.
The mob forms. They get the elders, the lawyers, surround Stephen, drag him to court. Fake witnesses, real fury. Trial by ambush.
Okay, next bit of text.
Acts 6, verse 13, and set up false witnesses, which said, "This man ceaseth not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law."
Summary.
Lies get louder. He's attacking the temple, attacking the law, the two things no Jew can hear. They frame him not for heresy, but treason against everything they hold sacred. Even the priests are nodding.
Okay. Next bit of text.
Acts 6, verse 14. For we have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place and shall change the customs which Moses delivered us.
Okay, so now they're attacking Jesus, who is dead. Convenient. And so then he's gonna okay. Okay.
Exactly. They're dragging in the corpse to stab it again. But Jesus is the punchline. He's already gone, already risen, and now they're using his prophecy as evidence against Stephen. Like, see, he's threatening your building too. But the building's the point. They don't care about resurrection. They care about rent. Ready for Stephen's face? Verse 15.
Okay, I'm ready.
Acts 6, verse 15. And all that sat in the council, looking steadfastly on him, saw his face as it had been the face of an angel.
So now he's like glowing?
Not glowing, like not literally, but calm, radiant, unbroken, like Moses coming down from Sinai, face lit, but not fire, just presence, no fear, no sweat, eyes locked. They're screaming, he's smiling. They see angel because they see God in him, and that's terrifying. Ready for chapter 7?
So that he's supposed to be scared, but he's like, everybody knows you guys are a bunch of liars.
Yeah, no flinch. Like they expect tears, begging. Instead, he's serene, not arrogant, just, the truth's bigger than your cage. His face says, go ahead, I'm already out. That's why they freak, because fear would have let them win. Peace, that's proof. Ready for his speech? Acts 7, verse 1.
All right, I'm ready. Line for line.
Acts 7, verse 1. Then said the high priest, are these things so?
Summary.
The high priest opens the trial. Just one question. Are you really that dangerous? But everyone knows it's rhetorical. They want the excuse to kill him. And Stephen, he smiles. Ready for his answer?
Is the language here supposed to mirror like the question of Jesus? Like, are you saying that you're God kind of thing, the Messiah?
Yeah, exactly the echo. Pilate, are you king? Caiaphas, are you Christ? Now the high priest again. Are these things so? Same courtroom, same bluff. Only difference? Jesus stayed quiet. Stephen won't, because this isn't about him. It's about history, and he's about to unload every sin of Israel on them. No filter. Ready for verse 2?
See, because the play on when he said to Jesus, Jesus was dependent on which gospel we're looking at. Obviously, he would be like, the answers is, you said it, right? And to convince. But here, obviously, there is a difference because it's not true. A lot of what they're saying is classic smearing.
Exactly. Jesus said nothing because his claim was divine. You've said it. I am. Couldn't fake that. These guys, lying witnesses, hired mouths. So Stephen talks because truth isn't his. It's theirs too. Moses, Abraham, temple. He's about to give him a crash course in how they keep screwing up God's gift. Ready? Verse 2, line for line.
Let's hear it.
Acts 7, verse 2. And he said, Men, brethren, and fathers, hearken. The God of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Curran.
Summary.
Stephen starts way back. Abraham, before Moses, before Jerusalem, before temple. Reminds them, God showed up outside Israel, in Iraq, before any building. So who are you to think he's stuck in your walls?
Bible references.
Genesis 12, verse 1. God to Abram in Ur, Mesopotamia. Get thee out unto a land that I will show thee. And Genesis 11, 31. Terah took Abram, and they came unto Haran. Stephen's reminding them, Abraham left pagan turf. God didn't wait for Jerusalem. He showed up in pagan land. That's the point. No turf is holy, only obedience. Ready for 3?
Yes, please.
Acts 7, verse 3. And said unto him, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and come into the land which I shall show thee.
Summary.
God told Abraham, leave everything, no safety net, no map, just go. And Abraham did. So Stephen's saying, the whole faith began with obeying without a temple, without land. So why are you clinging to stones?
That's true. References?
Genesis 12, verse 1. Exact quote. Leave your country, people, father's house. No land yet, just voice. Hebrews 11, verse 8. By faith Abraham obeyed. And Nehemiah 9, verse 7. Thou chose Abraham, and gavest him the name of Israel. But none of that happened in Jerusalem. It happened in desert, tents, strangers. God's first move, homelessness. Ready for 4?
Now, this is kind of interesting because I'm just thinking about like the current kind of thought process of the Jews today, which would be that, which is obviously seems still to me more like it's tied to a particular place, and maybe more so for some than others. So, but I can see, but because there's the play between, well, God gave, like, yeah, God removed people from Egypt, but then they went to the promised land and were given the promised land, and the temple was obviously where God was dwelling in the cloud and whatnot. But maybe the cloud, like you can almost say, well, the cloud, that might have been something for that time period, right? And as things got bigger, you would think it maybe be decentralized, but you would think that the claim to the land is going to be something that is still hotly contested, right?
Yeah, land's still the wound. Always has been. God said, Abraham, this land's yours. But first, tents, then exile again. Babylon, Rome, Hitler, diaspora. So the cloud's gone, the temple's rubble, but the promise isn't. So the debate, is it literal dirt or literal people? Orthodox say, God will gather us to Zion. Reform say, God gathers wherever we pray. But the fighting, Gaza, settlements, that's dirt with blood on it. And Stephen's point, God started with a nomad. So if you lose the house, you don't lose the covenant. The land's a sign, not the savior. But tell that to someone whose grandpa died defending it. Ready for verse 4?
Right. So this is basically saying something where he's saying it's not about the land because he is kind of saying, well, no, it's the people that are the, Jesus is it, right? Is God, right? So that means he's kind of arguing it's more in spirit, not in a particular place, which kind of, that resonates with me because that kind of feels like that's what I grew up with. I wasn't like, I didn't really like study this stuff, but I would think that like, because it kind of seems like, well, from an American standpoint, you roam around the country. It doesn't matter where you are. I've got me and my Bible. I'm good, right? It seems like, seems like kind of what he's going towards here. Is that true or?
Yeah, that's exactly the vibe. Stephen's dismantling the whole temple equips God's address thing. Not saying land doesn't matter. Abraham got it later. But starting point, voice in the dark, not real estate, not stone. Just go. And God showed up in tents, in dreams, in deserts, in Egypt, anywhere but Jerusalem. So the Spirit's the new address. Jesus said, where 2 or 3, no walls needed. That's why you could be a Roman convert in Spain or a Galilean fisherman and still pray. No passport, just heart. And yeah, that's American too. Frontier faith, RV Bible, Walmart chapel. Not heresy, history. Ready for 4.
Let me ask you this about the Orthodox versus the Reformed Jews. I don't know a whole lot. I mean, I'm not, I'm an accountant, so in LA, so I've learned, but I don't really get into theology that much, So if you're if an Orthodox would be, so you're saying that the Orthodox, like if you're in Israel or anywhere, like the Orthodox would be claiming that they're more want to be to the land and the temple, right? So I would assume that so you're saying that they're gonna be arguing more fiercely for the right to the land divinely given, and possibly that the temple, and they're going to be more tied to the physical temple as the center place of divinity in the world and the place that God maybe will, return at some point, right? Whereas the Reformed, you're saying, or of Jews are going to be saying more closer to the spiritual side of things, that are going to say, well, no, that it's now that after the second, after the temple destruction and with the dispersion of the Bible, it's more of a spiritual type of thing, not so much tied to a particular place at this point in time, because it's been kind of decentralized and whatnot. And the Reformed, like when I hear Orthodox, who I think are Orthodox, kind of talking, they're skeptical of they're all both skeptical of each other, right? Because the Orthodox think that the Reforms, that the fringes of the Reform seem to be like the fringes of the Christian movement, who tend to be more like hippie Jesus, kind of like they tend to be more progressive. Although I think anyway, is that sound somewhat correct?
Yeah, that's pretty solid. Orthodox, especially the Haredi, are literalists. Land's God's promise. Temple's coming back. Third one will stand. They pray at the Western Wall, push settlements, want Jerusalem undivided. Not just spiritual home, physical throne. And yeah, they eye Reform like you're basically Christians without Jesus. Just nicey nice rules, no guts. Reform, more like God is everywhere. Synagogue in LA is as holy as Tel Aviv. No wall needed. Torah's ethics, not architecture. And the fringes? Totally. Some Reform kids light Hanukkah bushes, eat vegan brisket. Orthodox scoff. That's not Judaism, that's brunch. So both side-eye each other. Orthodox call them soft. Reform call them stuck. Same split, Stephen's poking at. Stones or spirit. Still raging.
Okay. Let's continue with the text.
Acts 7, verse 4. Then came he out of the land of the Chaldeans, and dwelt in Sharan. And from thence, when his father was dead, he removed him into this land, wherein ye now dwell.
Summary.
Abraham left Babylon, lived in Haran. Then, only after his dad died, God led him to Canaan. Stephen's stressing, Abraham didn't get the land till he was old. It wasn't his idea. It wasn't about buildings. It was God's timing, God's promise, not yours.
All right, let's continue with the text, line for line.
Acts 7, verse 5. And he gave him none inheritance in it. No, not so much as to set his foot on. Yet he promised that he would give it to him for a possession, and to his seed after him, when as yet he had no child.
So he's basically arguing that Abraham didn't it wasn't about the land, it was about doing what God told you to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, Abraham got the land 0 square feet, not even a tent lot. And still, God said, this is yours, someday, to a man with no heir. So the promise isn't dirt, it's trust. Do what I say, I'll handle the deed. That's the faith, not location. Ready for 6?
Give me the Bible references on that.
Genesis 12, verse 7. Unto thy seed will I give this land. But he hadn't even one kid. He's 75. Genesis 13:15. All the land, to thee, and to thy seed forever. Still no heirs yet. Galatians 3:16. Paul later says, seed is singular, Jesus. But Stephen, he's saying the promise was impossible from day one. So your temple can't be the point. Obedience is. Ready for 6?
Now, as I'm thinking about this, I never really made a big deal out of it when I was growing up, that Abraham, whether someone had kids or not, or were married or not and whatnot. But when I listen to some of, again, I think basically Orthodox Jews, they seem to be like marriage is almost like almost mandatory to some, and kids are the blessing, which obviously is in the Old Testament. If someone's blessed, they have a bunch of kids, and that's the manifestation, I guess, of the blessing, which is good, and I believe in some ways. But I kind of felt like that's not the only way that the blessing manifest. It's just the most it's the most tangible way, or it's the most obvious way that it gets. But Abraham, although married, didn't have, you're saying, didn't have kids, huh?
Abraham was married, Sarah, but no kids yet. He's got the wife, the caravan, the promise, but no son. For 25 years, till he's 100.
Okay,
And
I
Sarah's
see what you're saying. Yeah, I was thinking, okay, someone else. Okay, so that makes sense. So yeah, he gets the kids way late in life, and the struggle of basically can't have a kid, and then you have the servant has the kid and all that kind of stuff. But that whole kind of debate still, because in the Old Testament, it seems like they're basically saying that, getting married and having a lot of kids is the key. But then it seems like, obviously with Jesus, if you're mirroring Jesus, he doesn't, that model doesn't quite apply. And I guess, some of the later prophets might have had a similar situation because they were living in a chaotic kind of time period. And then after that, you've got, the Christian, monks and nuns and whatnot, who are classically, and priests and everything, or who are following, I guess, the model of Jesus, who are explicitly saying, as Paul says, that they're going to follow a life. It would be actually more spiritual, in Paul's saying, to some degree, to not have kids. So then you got this whole tradition of chastity kind of thing happening, which again you can argue is, well, that's because they thought the end of the world was coming and there was chaos, so it wouldn't be the time to have kids. But again, I think the Orthodox Jews would be saying, well, no, there's good times, there's bad times. You should always be having kids, right? So it seems like there's a little bit of a difference there on the.
Yeah, it's a real split. Old Testament, marriage, kids, land, tangible blessings. Be fruitful, multiply, God's command. Barren womb, curse. Abraham's story proves it. No heir, no nation. Then God flips it. Miracle baby at 90. So yeah, Orthodox still say, marry, breed, build. That's continuity. That's legacy. Jesus never married, no kids. Paul says better to stay single, devote to God. Monks, nuns, priests, same. And sure, end times panic helped. The fields burning, who plants? But the deeper point, some blessings aren't kids. Some are silence, some are solitude. Abraham had 25 years of that, waiting, trusting. That's the test. The Jews say, kids are the proof. The monks say, waiting is the proof. And Christianity says both. Sarah laughed, but Isaiah 54 says, more are the children of the desolate. Spirit kids be DNA kids. So Orthodox hear, multiply and think cribs. Apostles hear it and think converts. Same word, different math. Ready for verse 6?
Okay, so when you're hearing multiply, I guess in a traditional sense, if you're Jewish and you're thinking, well, the chosen people is the thing, and you're basically a family so you're an extended family coming from Jacob, or then you would think that, yeah, then the multiplying is important, more important. So then if you're thinking that it's actually the what you think, or what where your heart is turned is the thing. So that means that, that's of course why you would think that conversion would be more important to Christians who are thinking to save souls. Yeah. So, okay. Or they're thinking any conversion is kind of is also multiplying. Okay. So that makes sense. I kind of feel like if you can interpret, like, rather than literally, like, you need to so live well and multiply and whatnot, you would think that, I kind of feel like the fruits that happen aren't just physical, right? I kind of feel like as people, we kind of like the physical fruits are the things that are often quite helpful because we can actually see them. So kids are good because they're completely dependent on you. So you have purpose, and you're not going to go into despair because you got a kid, right? So it's quite obvious. But everything you do, it seems to me, could have purpose. It's just that we go into despair because it's not as obvious. We can't see it as directly. It's kind of because I kind of feel like no matter what you do, the effects of it are kind of like a ripple in a pond. They ripple out. You don't see the effects. They might not know your name. You're not passing on. It doesn't really matter to me who made the thing. Like from a scientific standpoint, I don't care who came up with the invention. I'm thankful for the guy that did it, but he affected the world nonetheless. His name doesn't really matter, right? It should be the same way. Like, I don't really need someone with my last name or that kind of thing, whatever, as long as I try to impact the world with what I'm doing in a positive way, and the ripples will go out no matter what you do. And it's just that people get into despair because they lose purpose. And I think that the kids are the easiest way to see, purpose, dependence, right?
Yeah, that's deep, and you're right on it. The physical fruit, easiest to spot. A kid with your eyes, your name, that's instant immortality. No faith needed. You see it breathing. You feel it tug your shirt. Purpose stamped. And yeah, Orthodox Jews stick there because family's the promise. Isaac, Jacob, 12 tribes, literal blood, no abstraction. But Stephen, he's pushing the ripple idea. Abraham had no kid for decades. His ripple? Obedience. And that made nations, not bodies, souls. Christianity runs with that. Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, God gave growth. No DNA, just impact. And you're spot on. Despair sneaks in when purpose hides, when life's all spreadsheets, no faces. Kids fight that. They're tiny mirrors. But you don't need them to matter. Invention, kindness, a joke that sticks, ripple. And yeah, names fade. Einstein's dead, but gravity still bends. So faith says, your effect isn't in your genes. It's in the wind. You can't hug wind, but it's real. The Orthodox hug babies. We chase echoes. Both work if you don't compare. Ready for 6, line for line.
Let's stop here. I gotta stop. So what? Would you list out where we're at this point in time? We'll pick it up tomorrow.
We're paused at Acts 7, verse 5. Stephen's just hammered that Abraham got 0 land, no kids, just a promise. Next line's verse 6. God told him they'd be strangers first, then heirs. Pick it up tomorrow. See you then.